What is up, everyone? Today is Saturday, August 6th, 2022. And this is the Family Education and Support Group. Welcome back. I'm looking forward to this one today. It is a brand new talk with new content. And I know that it is Saturday because I am once again sitting in my living room with my one and only favorite blazer jacket on, with my basketball shorts underneath, which you cannot see, and ready to provide hopefully some value to your weekend. So a few things about myself. Let me give a quick introduction. My name is Param. I am the weekly, I guess, host of this show. What's up, Jim? Good morning. Good morning, Bita. Good morning in advance to everyone that's about to say good morning. We've been doing this for a few years now on this platform. It's just a wonderful resource, and it's something that I'm proud of and something that I look forward to each and every single Saturday. We have some faithful attendees that attend every week, and some of them are counselors, some of them are moms, some of them are dads, some of them are spouses, some of them are grandparents, some of them are children, some of them are those who are struggling with addictions and coping skills themselves, and some of them are family members who are watching others experience challenges with addictions and mental illness. So a little bit about my background. So I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy with an emphasis in child development over the lifespan, human development over the lifespan. I am also a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, addictions counselor, and I am also a high school basketball coach. And for those who it matters to, I am also in recovery myself from substances and substance use disorder. June 13th, 2008 is the day that I decided to change my life around and kind of explore what a life without drugs and alcohol would be like and where it would lead. And so hopefully my personal, my professional background, experience, expertise allows me to have the platform for you to be able to sit here and to listen. And yeah, so good morning, Kathleen. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Eric. You made it. That's what I'm talking about, man. Really, really good to see you. I hope I see you here each and every single week moving forward. And if the family's there too, hope the family's there. But long story short, today is actually a new talk. It's original content that I didn't have, prior to. For the ones who've been watching this for a few years now, I want you to know it'll be all new stuff. And I'm working on putting together a 52-week kind of curriculum, if you will, of just different talks and different topics. So if you have the opportunity today at some point in the live stream, just shoot out a bunch of topics and themes that you would like me to cover. I'll plug them in 1 week at a time for 52 weeks. And we'll go from there. So today is a very important topic when we're working in the field of mental health and addictions, because it's a very loaded space. And I don't mean that like loaded drugs and alcohol. It's loaded. It's like a bunch of landmines of just emotions and experiences and events and things that happened in the past. And they just come at different times and they blindside us and they take away what we're seeing in front of us. And all we're seeing is the past. So the whole theme of today is going to be learning how to forgive yourself for past mistakes you've made, and how to also forgive others for past mistakes they have made. Okay. So when you really think about this, is how important does this talk become? Really important, because everyone that's watching this right now is a human being. Therefore, I know that you've made mistakes in your life. And despite of knowing that, we all collectively have a hard time of letting go of the mistakes we made. So I've identified 12 different little talking points to go over in the next 45, 50 minutes. And the number 12 is for no specific reason at all. It's just randomly, it always happens. So number 1, it says, learning how to let go of past mistakes equals the human experience. Okay. If you identify with being a human being, you better identify with the ability and potential to make mistakes, right? And it's called being human. It is impossible to go from infancy, and you've seen an infant and how they operate in this world. It is impossible to go from that state to being an adult that's watching this right now without making mistakes. If anything, life has been a series of repeated mistakes that has got us here. So you got to first realize that it's not a unique experience that you've had. If you've made mistakes, you're not alone. And here's the other thing. If other people in your life have made mistakes, which they have, you're also not alone. And there's a Maya Angelou, which is someone that I love, and she has such beautiful, profound statements. There's one of her quotes that I think is very important to hear today. And it says, in life, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. So I'm going to say that one again because it's really important. It says, in life, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, it's on you to do better, right? That's on you to do better. So if life is a series of mistakes we make, and that's okay, what are you doing with those mistakes? Are they just experiences in your life that you've had that you feel bad about, that you feel sad about, that you feel down about, other people feel angry about? Or are you going to take that experience and instead of having it be a moment that defines you, be something that builds you, that builds your character, that transcends you to the next level of living? So that's number one. Now, number two is, again, another learning one. It says, learning how to let go of past mistakes equals kindness and compassion. Okay. Compassion, and here's another quote. If compassion doesn't include yourself, my friends, this shit's incomplete. If compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. So if all human beings, if we've established that all human beings, including yourself, are capable of and do make mistakes, therefore we're left with an option. Do you get angry, resentful, pissed off, upset when they just show up as being human? Or do you practice another one of human beings' beautiful traits, which is kindness and compassion? There is no other option, right? You either get annoyed, pissed off, frustrated, angry that someone does something, or you apply the other beautiful human trait of kindness and compassion. And here's the thing. Most people, for whatever reason, are able to have the grace to extend that kindness and compassion to someone else. But when it comes to themselves and the mistakes they have made in life, past, present, and maybe even in the future, all of a sudden they cut off that compassion towards themselves. And you cannot call yourself a kind or compassionate person if you do not extend that same kindness and compassion to yourself. And by the way, you got to realize that if I've been doing this for over a decade, imagine how many human beings I've sat across with that are just so brutally frustrated, upset, angry with themselves. But if someone else does something wrong, they're like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You're going to get up and do fine. They have the most beautiful words of wisdom to share with them. But when it happens to them, they go inward, they get angry, hostile to themselves. And that's the truth. So let's see what a counselor's take on this, Mr. Jim. Said, then learn from past mistakes to better your life and the life of others around you. And that's the whole point. You know, it's gosh, man, if there was a way I could write down the list of mistakes I've made in my life, and you take a look at it and say, wow, it's a lot of mistakes. However, what do we do with it? We take it, we evaluate it, we look at it, and we grow from it. So thank you, Jim, for your feedback right there. So now let's get into the kind of the therapeutic component of how the hell do you let go of past mistakes, self and others, okay? So number one, it says you have to identify and recognize your feelings. So I'm going to give you a little analogy here for how feelings operate if you don't know. If you are the home, so if I am the home, so imagine like a house and I'm the house, the feelings we experience on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, month-to-month basis, hour-to-hour basis are like visitors that come into our home. Our feelings that we experience are like guests and visitors that come through our home. Now, you better start making friends with those visitors. Some of them, by the way, are going to be hostile. Some of them are going to be visitors you don't want around for too long. Some of them are visitors that threaten the other visitors that are in there. If you bring in a lot of anger into your house, it's going to threaten joy. It's going to threaten happiness. It's going to threaten gratitude. But you can't selectively pick and choose who you let in. All right. I know this is a big metaphor, but stick with me here. When visitors, which are our feelings, come to our home, they can take over. They can really, really take over. And when you start to separate your feelings and yourself, then all of a sudden you start to get a little bit of clarity. You start to get a little bit of understanding. You start to get a little bit of relief even. Because the next one that I have here, it says that recognize that your feelings are not a part of you. You are not your feelings. So when the feeling of anger, the feeling of sadness, the feeling of fear, the feeling of guilt, shame, when they come into the home and they consume us, in that moment, we have to realize that those feelings don't last forever. Feelings are not facts and they are not you. But what a lot of people do when they come in, they try to avoid them. They try to push them out. They try to suppress them. Like anger knocks on the door. Nope, you're not coming in here. Sadness, you're not coming in here. Or if they come in, they're too hostile and they're too overwhelming. And you know what they do? They do negative coping skills to deal with these visitors inside their house. What are the negative coping skills? Well, how? You're watching a family education support group on an addiction mental health treatment Facebook page. One of the ways that people deal with feelings that are left over from their past and the mistakes they've made is substance abuse, substance use, addiction, dependency. If you're full of guilt and you're full of shame and they're inside your home and they're overtaking you, you know what a lot of people do? They drown the sorrow away. When you're full of anger, when you're full of hostility, maybe you're going to go smoke a little something to take that away. When you're full of fear, when you can't even go one step forward, maybe you take some benzos and some opiates that help you with that. And some of you might not even identify with that substance use, but guess what you do? When you're full, when those visitors of those emotions of the past, the mistakes you made come in, maybe instead of dealing with them head on, maybe you go work for 18 hours in a day. Maybe you eat and eat and eat and eat and process those emotions. Maybe some, the younger generation, you play video games. Maybe you go shop. Whatever it is that you do, it manifests in a certain way because we don't want to deal with that. We don't want to deal with what is that's inside of our home. And I really mean that you're not your feelings. And I've been open on the record saying this, that, there's so many, I told this to our program participants this morning. A lot of them come in with a diagnosis that somebody like myself or someone else has given to them, right? That diagnosis could be anxiety disorder. It could be major depression. It could be bipolar. It could be substance use disorder, the alcoholic, the addict, whatever you want to call it. These are labels and titles that somebody has given to them at some point in their life based on the symptoms that they were presenting in that moment. That's how a diagnosis happens, by the way. And then an individual sits in front of a clinician. They have all these signs and symptoms of their life. The clinician listens to it. It checks all the boxes for that diagnosis. Then all of a sudden that individual gets diagnosed with, let's say, general anxiety disorder, right? But here's the thing. The individual always has to realize and remember, and I told them this, you are not your anxiety. You are not your anxiety disorder. You are not your depression. You are not your depression disorder. You are not bipolar. You are not the bipolar disorder diagnosis. You are not an addict alcoholic. You're a human being that's experiencing symptoms related to substance use disorder at that point in your life. You're a person that's experiencing anxiety in that moment of your life. You're a person that's experiencing depression that moment of your life, right? We are not the feelings we are. We're not the labels we are. Yet, when we're thinking about the past and all the things we hold on to, how many human beings have I seen and counselors like Jim seen and the people watching this have seen that identify with their depression? That's all they are. They're full of guilt and shame for their past. And their shoulders are like this, and they walk like this, and they're sad, and they can't look up because they over-identify with that stuff. And if you think this just happens to people with addictions, you're not looking. I know family members that, let's just say they divorced when the kids were 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. They are so full of guilt about what happened that they just enable the child until the gates of insanity and death. Because of their own guilt. They identify, they believe that they're a bad person because they did something in their life. They over-identify with the feelings. They over-identify with the feelings. It's not who you are. Things happen in life. Feelings get produced. We are not our feelings. Okay. I'm by the way, if you're wondering where all this is going, this is great. Thank you, Jim. Jim said something here. I may have done, there's a word missing there. I may have done a bad thing, but I am not a bad person. Like, you can do something in life that's a mistake. It doesn't equal that you're a bad person, right? Family members, you can make mistakes with raising a child. There's nothing wrong with making a mistake. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It means that at the time, you did the best you could with the information that you had. However, I have been on the record saying this. Once you know better, then you got to do better. Once you know better, then you got to do better. So the next one here, I think this one goes into the whole compassion thing a little bit more. It says, recognize that you are being too hard on yourself. Okay, this one's really important. Again, a lot of people that struggle with addictions, they're highly sensitive people. They're very empathic people. If I talk to majority of the parents that are watching this about their relationship with their child, their son, their daughter, their spouse, whatever it is, when they were young, they're all going to just like, they all get overjoyed to talk about how sensitive their kid was when they were younger. It's like this really odd thing. My situation is the same way too. I have a story that my mom would probably share better, but I remember being in the city of Las Vegas when I was 9 years old, maybe. I went on a vacation with my aunt, my cousin, my mom. It was my first time going to Las Vegas. And I was 9 years old. This is before we went back to Iran. And I was such a sensitive, like, emotional kid. I mean, it was like the next level. And I remember walking around Las Vegas. I just saw so many homeless people, and I saw so many people begging for money. And I saw so many people just like they mentally ill and strung out, you know. And as a child, you can actually recognize those things, by the way. People think children don't understand when somebody's mentally ill, or children don't understand when somebody's struggling with addictions. Yes, they do. You know, it's kids are smarter than we give them credit for. But I remember I boycotted all of a sudden. I stopped in the middle of the streets. I sat down and I said, I'm not going inside of these casinos. And my mom was like, they're probably laughing at me. Why are you not going to the casinos? There's all these people homeless in these streets that need food, that need money, that need shelter. And people are going in there and just throwing their money away. I'm not okay with this system, you know? And I mean, at 9 years old, to have that type of sensitivity and empathy towards the lives of those struggling is, and then all of a sudden when I'm 23, 24 years old, and I'm caught up in my own addiction, alcoholism, substance abuse, and I'm taking things and I'm stealing things and I'm doing bad things. And then if my mom had a chance or my dad had a chance to talk in that moment of my life when I was really acting out and just really overtaken with addiction, they would say, when my child was young, he was so sensitive. So I know that all individuals who struggle with addictions and addictive behaviors are sensitive people, right? One of the reasons why they go for the substance abuse is because they don't know how to handle the flood of emotions they experience. They don't know how to cope with it. So you got to recognize when you're being so hard on yourself. And how do you recognize that? Because some people don't know. Well, would you talk to a child, and I'm not talking about like a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old, that's for sure, but like a 4, 5, 6-year-old. When they make a mistake, would you go up to the child and just rip them a new one? Would you, and I'm talking about a kid that you have no idea who it is. Would you just go at him, go talk about how stupid they are, how dumb they are, how could they, this and that? Would you do that? Majority of people that don't have severe upbringing challenges and issues of abuse, majority, like 99% of people would never do that. Ever. When a child makes a mistake, they always say, it's okay. This is a part of life. This is a part of growing up. It's okay to make mistakes. There's nothing wrong with that. What did you learn from it? What can you do next time to help yourself a little bit? And then somewhere along the line, we forget that even in this moment, you watching this right now, you're still that same child. I don't care how old you are. You want to know why? Because you're still a human being. And as long as you're human, as long as you're breathing, you're going to make mistakes. When you make that mistake, how do you respond to yourself? Do you tell yourself you're so stupid, you know better, you could have done better, you should have known better? Why'd you do this? Or would you talk to yourself the way you talk to a child? If the answer is the first one, you're going to really have a hard time forgiving yourself and forgiving others. So I strongly encourage to watch the dialogue you have towards yourself and how critical it is and what's the level of criticism you give to yourself. And if somebody's saying, hey, yeah, if my child made a mistake and I go in on him and I rip him up and I do this and I do that and I say this and I say that and I tell them they should know better and all that kind of stuff, you know what that tells me? It's not even them doing that. All they are doing is replaying what was done to them. Remember, hurt people in life hurt people. So if a child makes a mistake and as the parent, you go crazy on the child for making the mistake, I would bet whatever the hell I had to bet that when you were a child and you made a mistake, somebody, mom, dad, caregiver, grandparent, aunt, uncle, whatever that person was, gave you a really hard time and abused the hell out of you psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that you're doing that to others. Do I ever condone that? Absolutely not. I don't think that just because you were abused in life, it gives you the green light to go do it to others. However, I will tell you this, as a marriage and family therapist with an emphasis in child development, that's studied human development across the lifespan, that if you don't go back and look at what was done to you and heal from it and forgive yourself and forgive others, you will do to others what was done to you. This is just fact. People repeat what they experience until they heal from it and say that I will no longer continue this behavior. And that's how I always say we break multi-generational patterns of dysfunction. If you don't do the work to find out why the hell you are the way you are, you will do to others the exact same things in life that made you the way you are. Hear that from me. And I'm not exaggerating that. That's what happens. That's what happens. You know, first time I ever learned about inner child work, it was John Bradshaw, which is like the founding, one of the people that kind of really came up with it and got really mainstream. His example that he was using he was on the Oprah Winfrey show, and the example he was using, he's like, I have people that come in and they tell me, hey, I don't know what's happening. I'm losing my mind. The other day, I started yelling and screaming at my child for not washing the dishes, and I started yelling and screaming, and I couldn't lose it. And then afterwards, I went in the room and I broke down. I didn't know why I was doing that. And then I realized that I was doing the exact same thing to my child that my parents did to me. My parents yelled and screamed at me for not washing the dishes, and I was doing it to them. And I remember how painful it was. I used to cry in my room, and now I'm the one doing it to someone else, and now they're crying in their room. And when you think of that, how that happens is because self has not been forgiven, and those who have harmed us have not been forgiven. That's the only reason why that kind of stuff happens, my friends, and the healing process hasn't happened. So would you talk to a child the same way you talk when they make a mistake? You got to answer that question to yourself. If the answer is no, then it's some wounded part of you that's doing that. It's some wounded party that's doing that. So number 6, it says identify where you are being unrealistic. Okay, so what does that mean? When we have feelings in our thing and we start creating thoughts and ideas and all that kind of stuff, some of it is grounded in reality and some of it isn't. Believe it or not, we can have delusional thoughts, even though we think they're real. I'm not talking about mental disorders. I'm talking about somebody that's free of a mental diagnosis of with a thought disorder. It's a regular person. You can have thoughts that are delusional, right? So a good example is this. Someone that says, I always make mistakes, or they always do this. We've heard that before, right? People say, I always do this, or they always do this. Oh, that's what they always do. That's what I always do. I want to hear this from me. That's bullshit. Nobody is always anything. If you ever catch yourself saying that I always do this, or they always do that, that is a delusional statement, and it's not grounded in reality. The only thing as human beings we do always is breathe. That is the only thing we always do throughout the day, consciously and subconsciously, that gets us through the day. Outside of that, no human being always does something. They might do something that causes pain or discomfort, but they also do things that bring a lot of joy. They might do something once in a while that hurts those around them, but they do things around to the same people that actually put smiles on their faces. They might keep someone up at night some nights, but some nights that person's sleeping well because of them. You know, if you ever catch yourself in that always cycle, You got to stop and say, am I being delusional or not? Nobody is always anything. Let's see what my mom said. My mom said, I'm responsible for all my mistakes I made in the past, but I don't feel ashamed or guilty anymore. So in order to get to that state, and I'm happy to hear that, Mom. Me and my mom, we went walking last night, 4 miles, 1 hour, well, a little bit over an hour and 10 minutes. It was fun. But I'll tell you this, that when I was new in recovery, so let's go back 14 years, my mom did not have the thought process, the language, the vocabulary, the emotional understanding to write what she wrote here. Because when I was new in there, you know what they do? My mom goes and, hanging out with my dad, and they're talking and they're saying, what the hell did we do wrong? How did this happen? How does the older brother not have addictions, but this younger one can't stop drinking or doing drugs? What do we do wrong? It's our fault. We have to fix this, right? That's the narrative that happens, right? Or they say, we can't tell people in the family because if they find out, they're going to think we're bad parents, whatever it is, and I don't know if my mom actually had that thought, but there's a lot of shame and guilt around this, around her own choices. That has nothing to do with me, about their own mistakes. And today, when she says I'm responsible for all my mistakes, that's a big statement for someone to be able to say. Because most people, when they make a mistake, they'll take a little bit of responsibility, but they love giving away the responsibility to other people. They love that. Because as long as I give a little bit of responsibility to someone else, I'm not fully liable for what happened. But when you take it on fully and own it and wear it, then that's when stuff like shame and guilt can go away. My mom said exactly true with you put a little sad emoji. So I don't know. If you're not feeling ashamed and guilty, you don't need to put a sad emoji. Put it exactly true, Mom, with like a smiley face. That would be much better because that's probably how you feel. No sad faces anymore. We don't need that. Unless something sad happens, then it's okay to be sad. So let's see. Number 8. Oh, this is number 7. This one's important. This is my favorite one. I always give you my favorite. This is my favorite. Identify where your inner monologue diverges from reality. So what is an inner dialogue? The inner voice inside of our head. We all have an inner voice, my friends. We all have an inner voice. Again, I'm not talking about thought disorders. Put that aside. If anybody has a diagnosis that causes them to have thought disorders, and it's a completely different conversation, completely different level of dialogue that we would be having about it right now. But that's a very rare diagnosis in the general population. So the general population, we all have an inner dialogue. We all have an inner voice. If you have been so much of a human doing and so busy that you haven't stopped to hear your inner dialogue, I can help you really quickly in the next 30 seconds see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to shut up for about 20 seconds. So don't leave anywhere. I'm going to shut up for 20 seconds. I don't know if that was 20 seconds or not, but I don't want to lose too many people here in case someone just popped in. When I went quiet and you sat there quietly, all of a sudden you start to hear your thoughts. Why is he going quiet for? Wait, has it been 20 seconds? I feel like he hasn't talked for a minute. What's the point of this? This is stupid. Okay, I get it. What's he trying to say? When you go silent and when you experience silence, the voices inside of our head, our inner dialogue starts to speak. Sometimes in certain situations, the voice gets louder when we experience certain feelings inside. In the inner voice, the inner critic, the inner dialogue, the inner monologue, it's rarely optimistic, positive, motivating, all that kind of stuff, unless we train ourselves and teach ourselves with positive affirmations. For the most part, you wake up in the morning and it's like, I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm too stupid. I'm too dumb. I'll never be able to figure this one out. It's too late. I should have started sooner. It's like this highly critical voice that all it wants to do is put you down. And that voice, by the way, oftentimes it's an external voice. So as a marriage and family therapist, emphasis in child development, one of the things that I've commonly told people is be careful for what you tell your children, because one day it will become their inner critic. The voice inside their head will become what it is that you're telling them. So if you're telling them always things about putting them down, later on in life, they're going to put themselves down. And you're not connecting that dot, but that's what happens. And sometimes the voice could be the society and the expectations and the roles of society and all that kind of stuff. You know how many people get screwed up in life for the following reason? Hear this one out, my friends. So many human beings, young adults, get messed up in life because somewhere along the way, there was a BS story that was spoon-fed to us to make us believe that it's true when it has no truth at all. And that story is this: 18 years old, you graduate high school. 22 years old, you graduate college. 25 years old, you're in a career job. 27 years old, you found your significant other. 28 years old, that person is pregnant. You're getting ready to have a child. You're getting ready to buy a home. That home better have a white picket fence. That child better have a sibling in a couple years after that. You better move up the corporate ladder. You better start doing all of the steps that you do in life by age 32 years old and be an adult. When we get that BS story fed to us by society, by others, by expectations, by school, by the way it's all set up, if our reality doesn't match that at the age of 30, 35, 40, we feel like failures. And you know what? Society failed, not the individual. Who the hell came up with the thought process that our society tells us how we're supposed to develop and grow up? Is that timeline putting in things that actually happen to us? Does that timeline care about abandonment, trauma, abuse? Does that timeline care about different individualities of learning, of experiencing life, of loss, of grief? Does it? Hell no. It says if you live a perfect life, this is what's supposed to happen. But what the hell in life is perfect? So you got to be able to realize that voice inside your head, it's not even yours. Start to get your own voice. Getting your own voice is powerful. Start saying things to yourself that you want to hear. Like all the things in life you wish someone would have told you, start saying it to yourself, and your brain's not going to know the difference after a while. The brain won't know the difference after a while. So number 8, keep things in perspective always. And it's Eileen, what'd you say here? Sorry, it's I have been told that the inner voice begins to set by 2 years old. Yeah, 2 years old. So 0 to 2 is like our serious attachment stuff. When you talk about brain development. So 0 to 2 is very important, and it's significant with attachment. So attachment is usually primary caregiver. Sometimes they call it mom and dad. Sometimes it could be a single parent. Sometimes it could be grandparents. It could be adopted parents, foster parents, whatever it is. 0 to 2 is very, very important. 2 to 5 is also very important. But by 2 years old, you start to understand what the environment is reinforcing to you. So if you feel safety, your brain's going to be wired to be a little bit more safe. If you feel fear, chaos, your brain's going to get wired to be a little bit chaotic. And it goes until about 5 years old there. And then we start to get some things established in us. But that's correct. There's nothing wrong with that. Jess, welcome. Hey, we're never late. You didn't miss anything. I'm still here. You can go watch it again, watch it after. But thank you for participating in this thing. I appreciate it. So, and that's on YouTube. So our YouTube page, it gets a few views here and there. It's not like our Facebook page, but it's growing a little bit. So I appreciate you watching. And the next one that I have here is keeping things in perspective. This one's important. Here's why. You ready? You got to realize that the people that you need to let go and forgive in your life, yourself and others, sometimes didn't know any different. Like how many clients, how many program participants, how many human beings have sat across from me and they're just angry and resentful and upset that their mom or dad never gave them love or expressed love. Maybe they gave them things, they provided for them, but they never gave them a hug or loved them. But here's the thing. You got to curb your expectations, because how can you expect somebody to give you something they don't have? There is a Persian, I'm going to say it in Farsi here for the Farsi ones, but then I'll translate it. There's a Persian saying that says, با جیب خالی نمیتوان بخشش کرد. What does that mean? جیب خالی means empty pocket. بخشش means giving to others. With an empty pocket, you can't give to others. You can't give to others. With empty pockets, you can't give to others. So if the people that you're pissed off and upset about, the people that you need to forgive, all that kind of stuff, if they didn't have what it was that you wanted your whole life, I'm not excusing it, by the way, I'm just saying reality. If they didn't have it, and your whole life you're upset and frustrated and pissed off that you never got it from them, you got to start looking at your own part in this and say, wow, I have some unrealistic expectations. I'm asking someone to give with empty pockets when they had nothing to give. And then all of a sudden, remember, we go back, learning how to let go and forgive other people is related to kindness and compassion. That's when you plug in the compassion and say, that must have been hard for them to go through life without getting what it was that they didn't get. And then, like I said earlier, if you don't realize that without doing the work and healing and forgiving yourself and forgiving them, that you will also do that to the next generation, it's a wake-up call. Expectations do kill your inner peace. You know, I always use the William Shakespeare quote, Jim. It says, expectation is the root of all heartbreak. You know, in our program, 12-step programs, we have a book called the 12 and 12, which is like the kind of the complimentary book that comes with the big book. And in it, one of it says, you know, our serenity, which is inner peace, soundness of mind, and our expectations are a zero sum. Zero sum means that it only reaches up to 100. So if one is 80, the other one's 20. The higher your expectations are, the lower your level of serenity. The higher your serenity is, the lower your expectations. That's a choice. Yeah, Counselor Julian said, expectations are cause for future resentments. Yeah, in the program, what do we call it? Expectations are resentments in construction. That's what they say, right? So a few more here. It says to set boundaries for preventative purposes. So once you forgive people, live and let live, right? Work on forgiveness. You forgive yourself, you forgive others. I know this is a bigger process than that, but once you do it, at this point, you got to set some boundaries. You know, I didn't say set some boundaries first before you do all this, because I believe if a person sets some boundaries, they can't even forgive someone first because they're not allowing that connection to happen. So when you truly forgive something or someone, then you got to set boundaries on it. Because here's the thing. If they did something to you that they didn't know any better, they didn't have the life experience, they didn't know the tools, this and that, all that kind of stuff, you can forgive them for that. But now that you know better, you got to do better, because if someone doesn't work on themselves, they're going to continue doing it again. The only way you can prevent yourself from future harm is to set boundaries. I just have two more here. Sorry, I went a little bit longer than I normally did on some of these, so it's okay. The next one says, don't go at it alone. Please remember this one. If you have been harboring feelings of resentment, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame for a few years, a few decades, 20, 30 years, please don't go and try to address and resolve and heal all those by yourself. Remember I said some of these feelings that come in our house, these visitors, we call them, some of them are hostile. Especially if you're new in the recovery world, whether you're recovering from substances or recovering from codependency or your loved one, these feelings are very overwhelming. If you give someone in early recovery a very high dose of guilt and shame, and they already have low self-esteem, or you give them something to really be sad about and all that kind of stuff, they're going to go back to what worked for them their whole life, their coping skill. I know society doesn't think it works, but if you ask the individual who uses substances, they'll tell you it works short term, but that's why they use, right? So don't go at it alone. When you're trying to process lifelong anger, make sure you got a professional there that knows what they're talking about. When you're trying to process lifelong guilt, make sure you got someone there that can love on you and that can help you build yourself back up. You don't want to do this stuff on your own. These feelings, even though they're not facts, even though you are not your feelings and all that kind of stuff that I talked about, we still have a hard time with the emotional intensity of some of them. And the higher the emotional intensity, the higher we get stressed out, the more we act out in addictive behaviors. And the very last one I have, number 12 of 12 of learning how to let go of your own mistakes and the mistakes of others, is to be patient. It might take some time. And, I'm going to erase the word might, and I'm going to say it will take some time. If you've been unable to forgive yourself for an extended period of time, or you've been unable to forgive someone else for an extended period of time, don't think that you're just going to get off this talk and say, you know what? Parham is right. I'm going to start forgiving myself. I'm going to start forgiving others. Because, as soon as something reminds you of the past, it's right there again. So it takes some time, because here's the thing. Remember, especially the cases I was talking about that someone can't give you something they don't have. This is multi-generational patterns that have been around for centuries, for decades. They don't break in 30, 60, 90 days. Like if a kid has had a bad relationship with their parents for 20 years, right? A bad relationship, and they're pissed off at each other. The parents upset and sad because the kid never reached their potential. The parents upset and sad because the kid doesn't have this or doesn't do this and all that kind of stuff. And the kid's pissed off and sad because the parents didn't do X, Y, and Z. Do you really think that in 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, that everyone's going to forgive each other, kumbaya, and they're going to move on? It doesn't work that way. You got to build some time. You got to build some trust. You got to do all that kind of stuff. It's impossible to just let go like that. Here's another quick one-liner from Jim. Using the same thinking that got you to where you're at probably won't get you to where you need to be. And that's I strongly believe in that. I think Einstein was attributed to Einstein. It says the level of thinking that creates the problem usually can't find the solution to the problem. You gotta find a different version of it. And again, when all else fails, just remember we're all human beings and we're all going to fail. But treat yourself the way you would treat a child that makes a mistake. And if you really don't know how to do that, then I have a strong feeling that you've had some serious trauma and abuse growing up. So and let's see what Eileen said here. Eileen said, I found that the first step is working at being mindful is feeling surface. 100%. So that's when I go back, Eileen, I talked about identify and recognize your feelings. That actually is. So that is a form of mindfulness. It's just identify like what's inside the house. Like, what am I feeling? Because sometimes our feelings get like convoluted with each other and we just feel overwhelmed. And overwhelmed is a feeling, but there's so many different layers to that. Like, why am I feeling overwhelmed? Is there some fear? Is there some frustration? Is there some apathy? Is there some, what's in there that I feel all that all of a sudden? And Sarah said, love and need the patience reminder. Yeah. You know what? I do know you're a big fan of instant gratification therapists, but it's something we all need. I need it myself too. And thank you for watching. Hossein, the more patience I exercise, the more stronger I get. 100%. I mean, there's a saying that says patience is a virtue. A virtue. It means it's one of the highest characteristics, highest forms, evolutions that a human being can get to. So we all strive for it. And by the way, the reason why the Sarahs of the world and even the Hosseins of the world, which are different generations, all struggle with patience now is because our world has become increasingly faster. So when the world is hyper speeding up, and I'm telling you that you have to apply patience in life, it goes contrary to the experience that we're having. So when everything else in life is instant, but letting go of and forgiving self and others for what they've done is a patient process. It's like, wow, can I just put that relationship in the microwave and 3 minutes later it's ready to go? No, man, it don't work like that. So all that being said, today was a really cool family education support group. Again, I'm building a 52-week, like weekly kind of thing. So if you have some ideas, just type a bunch of things that you want me to talk on and I'll do them. But thank you for hearing me out. I made this last night around 12 o'clock at night. So it wasn't too polished, but I think it was pretty good. And I was happy with the outcome. I love and appreciate all of you. Please share this. It's just share the link with someone on your Facebook. Have them kind of watch it if they're having a hard time letting go of something in life. And maybe we can free some people. Maybe we can provide some relief to people. Maybe we can help people break the constraints of their past and embrace a new future with transformation. And I'm good to go. So love and appreciate all of you. Thank you, everyone. Zora, John, Debbie, Jess, everyone here that's saying all these things. I really appreciate it. Kathleen, you guys are all great. Thank you for the kind words. I'll be back same time, same place next week, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.